She had always loved music. From the earliest days she could remember, the sound of a piano made her heart beat faster, like it was speaking directly to her soul. In her small town, music was something people did for fun or for school events, but she felt something deeper. When her fingers touched the keys, it was as if the world disappeared. Every note had meaning, every chord a story, and every melody a life of its own. But the world around her often failed to understand her passion. Growing up, she had always been quiet and observant, the kind of girl who preferred books and music over loud games and chatter. She would watch other children laugh and run, sometimes feeling a pang of loneliness, but when she sat at the piano, that feeling would fade. She spent hours alone, practicing. Her parents were supportive, but they were practical people. They wanted her to do well in school, to have a stable life. Music was seen as a hobby, not a serious pursuit. Still, she did not let their doubts shake her. She practiced every day, sometimes in secret, sometimes with their quiet encouragement. School, however, was a different challenge. Her classmates did not share her love for music. When she mentioned she was learning piano, some would giggle, and others would say she was wasting her time. They couldn't see what she could see in the music. They couldn't feel the emotions hidden in the melodies. At recess, while everyone else played soccer or raced around the playground, she would sneak into the music room. The piano there was old and scratched, but it belonged to her in those moments. She would press the keys gently, and the sounds that came out made her feel alive. The first time she played in front of others, it was a small school event. She was nervous. Her hands shook as she approached the piano. Whispers followed her. "She can't play," someone said. "This will be boring," another whispered. She tried to ignore them, telling herself that the music was more important than their opinions. When she began, the first few notes were shaky. She closed her eyes, letting the music guide her. Slowly, her confidence grew. Her fingers moved more smoothly, and the melody began to flow. Some of the older students raised their eyebrows in surprise, but the laughter had already started in a corner of the room. They didn't believe she could finish without mistakes. She finished the piece, a little breathless. And while a few clapped politely, the snickers were louder in her ears than any applause. That moment stayed with her, a mixture of pride and hurt. It wasn't just classmates. Teachers sometimes doubted her too. She had one music teacher who tried to encourage her, but he was often busy with the stronger students, the ones who already performed well. "You have potential," he would say quickly, before hurrying to another lesson. It was not enough to quiet the voices in the school hallways or the mocking whispers that followed her. Yet, she held on to that small encouragement like a lifeline. It reminded her that someone believed in her, even if the world seemed determined not to. Every day after school, she would go home and sit at the piano in her living room. Sometimes she would play familiar pieces she had learned in lessons, and other times she would experiment, creating melodies that felt like they had always been inside her. She would make mistakes, of course wrong notes that made her frown, but she never stopped. If anything, the mistakes taught her more than success. She learned patience, focus, and resilience. She learned to listen not just to the sound, but to the feeling behind each note. Her family watched her quietly. Her parents didn't always understand why she spent so much time at the piano, why she refused to put it down even when she was tired. They asked questions sometimes, gentle but concerned. "Why don't you go play outside with the others?" They would ask. She would just smile, her eyes on the keys, and say, "I like it here." They eventually stopped asking. They couldn't force her to abandon something that made her so happy. Sometimes late at night, they would hear music drifting from her room. Her younger sibling would peek in and whisper, "It sounds beautiful." Those words, even from a child, felt like a treasure. Despite the support at home, the outside world remained skeptical. In class, she was often ignored or underestimated. Teachers would assign her simpler pieces than they did for others, assuming she couldn't handle more challenging material. Some students would make fun of her if she practiced in front of them. They didn't know how much effort went into each note, how much heart she put into the smallest sounds. They only saw a quiet girl, sitting alone, and they thought that meant weakness. But what they didn't see was strength built in silence. In the hours spent, learning, failing, and trying again, sometimes the mockery was painful. Once a group of students hid outside the music room window, laughing and pointing as she practiced a particularly difficult piece. She didn't notice at first, completely absorbed in the music, but when she did, her hands froze. Her face flushed, and she wanted to run away, to never touch the piano again. But then she remembered the feeling she got when the melody finally came together, when the notes sounded exactly as she imagined. That feeling was stronger than fear. She took a deep breath, let it out slowly, and continued. The laughter faded, at least for that moment, drowned out by the music she was creating. She felt proud, not because anyone else believed in her, but because she had not let them take away what she loved. At school, the doubts continued. People whispered, "She's too quiet," or "She'll never be good enough to perform." They didn't realize that quiet didn't mean weak, that someone could be soft-spoken and still carry fire inside. They didn't know that every note she played was the result of countless hours of dedication. But she didn't let them see how much it hurt. She smiled when necessary, nodded politely, and kept moving forward. Inside, she held on to her music like a secret garden, a place where she was free and alive. Her friends were few, but they mattered deeply. They were the ones who encouraged her, who listened when she shared her compositions, who clapped when no one else did. They didn't mock, they didn't doubt. With them, she felt safe to be herself. Sometimes, they would ask her to play at their small gatherings. And though she was nervous at first, she learned to find joy in sharing her music. Each time her confidence grew a little. Each time, the laughter of others mattered a little less. She also began to notice that music had power beyond her own happiness. When she played, people's expressions changed. Even the skeptical ones would sometimes stop and listen, their whispers fading. She saw their surprise, their awe, and realized that her music could reach them in ways words could not. That thought filled her with a quiet determination. If she could touch even a few hearts, she could make someone pause and feel something real, then all the mockery was worth it. Her journey was not easy. Every day was a battle against doubt, both from others and from herself. There were moments when she felt exhausted, when her fingers ached and her mind begged for a break. But every time she considered giving up, she remembered the feeling that had first drawn her to the piano, the joy that came from creating something beautiful. That joy was stronger than any criticism, stronger than any laughter. It kept her going. In those quiet moments, she would close her eyes and imagine the future. She imagined herself on stage, playing for people who listened, who understood, who were moved by her music. She imagined proving everyone wrong, not with anger, but with the beauty of her talent. She imagined a day when the laughter would be replaced by applause, when skepticism would turn into admiration. Those visions gave her hope, and hope became her secret strength. She began to set small goals for herself. Each day, she would challenge herself to learn something new, to play a difficult piece, to perfect a melody she had created. She kept a small notebook where she wrote down ideas for compositions, little fragments of songs that might one day become something greater. It was her way of holding on to her dreams, of giving them form and direction. Every entry in that notebook was a step forward, a promise to herself that she would not let others define her. Despite all the challenges, she never lost her love for music. Every note, every chord, every melody reminded her why she had chosen this path. The piano was more than an instrument. It was a companion, a confidant, a place where she could be truly herself. And though the world outside often mocked her, she knew that her music was real, that it mattered, and that one day, it would speak louder than any doubt or laughter. She was building something invisible to others, something that only she could see, a foundation of talent, patience, and perseverance. It was quiet work, unnoticed by most, but it was powerful. Each hour of practice, each mistake corrected, each melody perfected, was a step toward something greater. She didn't need immediate recognition. She only needed to keep moving forward, one note at a time, trusting that her dedication would one day be seen. And so, she continued. She practiced in secret corners. She experimented with new sounds. She pushed herself beyond limits. She faced laughter, doubt, and skepticism every day, but she never let it stop her. Every challenge became a lesson, every setback a motivation. And in the quiet moments, when she sat alone at the piano and the music flowed through her fingers, she felt invincible, because she knew the truth that no one else could see yet. Her music was real, her talent was real, and one day, she would show the world, after the early experiences of doubt and ridicule. She developed a quiet determination that became the foundation of her daily life. Every afternoon, she would return home from school and immediately go to the piano, as if it were a sanctuary she could never leave. The keys felt like old friends beneath her fingers, familiar yet always capable of surprising her. Each practice session became a small adventure. She would start with the pieces assigned by her teacher, playing them carefully and trying to perfect every note, every pause, every emotion. Then she would move on to her own compositions, those secret pieces she had been developing over months and years. Each one a reflection of her thoughts and feelings. At first, her progress was slow. Some days her fingers seemed stiff and unresponsive, her mind distracted by worries about what others thought. Other days, the music flowed easily, almost effortlessly, as if the piano itself was guiding her. These moments of success were rare enough to feel magical. When they happened, she would close her eyes and lose herself in the sound, forgetting everything else. The satisfaction of finally mastering a difficult piece, the joy of hearing her own melodies come alive, fueled her perseverance. She experimented constantly. If she heard a piece she liked on the radio or at school, she would try to recreate it on the piano. She would change the rhythm, alter the chords, or add her own twists. She found joy in combining different styles of music, blending classical structures with modern melodies, creating something that felt uniquely hers. These experiments were her playground. No one was there to judge her, no one to tell her she was wrong or right. The music was hers. She could explore it freely. Evenings were sometimes spent in the quiet of her bedroom, where she would write down small musical ideas in a notebook she always kept close. Some were fragments, short sequences of notes that seemed interesting. Others were nearly complete pieces she hoped to perfect one day. Writing down her thoughts gave her a sense of control and purpose. It also allowed her to step away from the piano occasionally, to think about the music in a new way. She began to understand that being a musician wasn't just about playing notes, it was about understanding sound, rhythm, emotion, and storytelling. Her family watched her quietly during these hours. They no longer questioned why she spent so much time at the piano. They had come to accept that this was a part of her life. Sometimes her younger sibling would sneak into the room and sit quietly, listening as she played. At first, she felt self-conscious, worried about being judged even by someone close. But soon, she realized that the joy of sharing her music, even in small ways, added another layer of fulfillment to her practice. She began to notice subtle reactions, a small smile, a quiet humming along, or wide eyes filled with wonder. These moments reminded her that her music could touch people, even if only in tiny ways. She also found inspiration outside of her home. Occasionally, she would watch videos of famous pianists or listen to recordings of classical music. She was amazed at how others could express so much emotion with their playing, and it motivated her to push herself further. She didn't try to copy them exactly. Instead, she tried to understand what made their music so moving and how she could incorporate similar feelings into her own work. It was not imitation, it was learning, growing, and discovering her own voice. School continued to be a challenge. Though she had grown more confident, the whispers and occasional laughter from classmates never completely disappeared. She learned to block them out, focusing instead on her music. She realized that the laughter and doubt were reflections of the insecurities and ignorance of others, not her own abilities. The more she practiced, the more she believed in herself, and the less power the opinions of others had over her. Each day, she carried with her the knowledge that her work mattered. Even if others didn't see it yet, she discovered that perseverance required patience. Some days she struggled with particular pieces, unable to get them right no matter how hard she tried. It was tempting to give up or move on to something easier, but she knew that real growth came from pushing through difficulty. She would break pieces down, practicing small sections repeatedly until they were perfect. Sometimes she would slow the tempo, Sometimes she would play only one hand at a time. It was painstaking work, but with each repetition, she felt herself improving, her fingers becoming more nimble, her understanding of music deepening. Her mentor, an older teacher in the community, became an important part of her journey. He recognized her dedication and her talent, often giving her small challenges to test her skills. He didn't praise her excessively, but his quiet encouragement meant a lot. "You have something special," he told her one afternoon, after listening to a composition she had written. "Keep working at it, and it will take you places." Those words became a mantra. Every time she doubted herself, she would remember them and continue practicing with renewed determination. Beyond technique and practice, she learned about the emotional side of music. She began to understand how to convey feelings through rhythm, dynamics, and expression. A simple melody could express sadness, hope, or joy if played with intention. She experimented with tempo, volume, and phrasing, learning how small changes could transform a piece. She began to connect with the music on a deeper level, feeling it not just with her fingers, but with her entire being. There were days when her motivation waned. The long hours, the mistakes, and the lack of recognition sometimes made her wonder if all the effort was worth it. On those days, she would take breaks, walk outside, or simply sit quietly and listen to other music. But she never abandoned the piano. She understood that mastery required time, patience, and a willingness to endure challenges. Every setback was a lesson, every failure an opportunity to learn. She also started to notice the subtle changes in herself. She became more confident, not in a loud or boastful way, but quietly assured. She carried herself with a sense of purpose, knowing that her music was her voice, her truth, and her gift. She began to speak up more, share her ideas, and even offer to perform for small groups of friends and family. Each small performance was a test of courage. Each successful one strengthened her resolve. The growth she experienced was not just musical. She learned discipline, patience, and resilience. She learned to focus, to listen deeply, and to trust her instincts. She learned that criticism, whether fair or unfair, could be transformed into motivation. And she learned that passion, when nurtured with dedication and love, could overcome doubt and fear. In her mind, she often imagined a future where she could share her music with a larger audience. She pictured herself on stage, playing pieces that moved people, connecting hearts and minds through the universal language of sound. These visions were powerful motivators, pushing her to practice harder, think creatively, and dream bigger. She realized that the journey itself, with all its struggles and small victories, was shaping her into the person she wanted to become. Through all of this, her love for the piano never faded. It remained constant, a source of comfort and inspiration. No matter what happened in school, with friends, or in her community, she could always return to the piano and find peace. The music was a mirror of her soul, reflecting her emotions, her dreams, and her determination. And in those moments, she knew that nothing could take it away from her. She began to understand that success was not just about being recognized or praised. It was about the growth, the effort, and the joy of creating something meaningful. Each day of practice, each new composition, each challenge overcome was a victory in itself. She learned to celebrate these small achievements, knowing that they would one day lead to bigger opportunities and recognition. Her journey of perseverance continued, each day building on the last. She practiced, experimented, and learned, never allowing doubt or ridicule to deter her. With every note she played, she became more skilled, more confident, and more determined. She was creating a foundation that could not be shaken, a base of talent, resilience, and passion that would carry her through the challenges ahead. And so, she continued, driven by love for her craft and the quiet hope that one day her music would speak for her. She practiced not for applause, not for recognition, but for the joy of creating something real and beautiful. And in that commitment, she found not only growth and skill, but a sense of purpose that no amount of doubt or laughter could ever take away. Weeks turned into months, and the young pianist's skill grew steadily. Her daily practice, the long hours alone, and her constant experimentation were beginning to show results. She had reached a point where the melodies she played were no longer just accurate, they carried emotion, depth, and a sense of story. She began to notice that even casual listeners, friends or family, were moved by her music. Their reactions were small, at first a quiet smile, a nod, a lingering glance, but they told her she was making progress. One day, an announcement at school caught her attention. There was going to be a talent showcase, a chance for students to perform in front of an audience. She felt a rush of excitement mixed with fear. Her mind was flooded with memories of past mockery and whispers. The laughter, the doubts, the skepticism from classmates, all of it, returned in a wave of anxiety. She wondered if she should try to perform or stay hidden as she usually did. But the thought of finally sharing her music with a larger audience, of letting her talent be heard, was too tempting to ignore. For days, she wrestled with the decision. She imagined the audience, the judges, the classmates who had laughed at her before. What if she made mistakes? What if they laughed again? But then she also imagined the alternative, never trying, never showing the world what she could do, and carrying the regret forever. She realized that the only way to silence the doubts, both her own and others, was to take the risk and perform. After careful thought, she signed up for the showcase. Once she committed, the preparation became intense. She chose a piece that she had been perfecting for months, one that combined technical difficulty with expressive emotion. Every day after school, she focused on refining it, paying attention to the smallest details. She practiced fingering, timing, and dynamics until the music felt as natural as breathing. She also worked on her presence, learning to control her nervous energy and channel it into the performance. Her family noticed her focus and determination. They offered quiet support, never pushing but always encouraging. Her mentor, too, provided advice. "Remember," he said, "the music is yours. Don't think about them. Think about the story you want to tell." These words stuck with her. She began to view the performance not as a test, but as a chance to communicate something real, to connect with others through her music at school. Rumors about her participation began to spread. Some students whispered she'd probably mess up, while others doubted her ability completely. The skepticism was palpable. Even a few teachers seemed unsure whether she was ready. She overheard the doubts, but instead of feeling disheartened, she used them as motivation. Every remark, every whisper, every look of disbelief became a reason to practice harder, to make sure that when the time came, her music would speak louder than any words. The week of the showcase arrived, and she could feel her nerves building. Each night, she rehearsed as if she were performing in front of the audience, imagining the faces, the reactions, the environment. She practiced walking onto the stage, sitting down at the piano, and beginning the piece with confidence. She visualized herself playing flawlessly, letting the music flow through her naturally. These mental exercises helped calm her anxiety, giving her a sense of control over her emotions. Finally, the day of the showcase came. Backstage, she could hear the chatter of the audience, the laughter and the applause for other performers. Her heart pounded in her chest, and she felt the familiar tightness in her stomach. She reminded herself of all the hours she had spent preparing, all the work she had done, and all the obstacles she had overcome. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes for a moment, and focused on the music she had worked so hard to create. When her name was called, she walked onto the stage with steady steps. The audience quieted, a mixture of curiosity and mild skepticism in the air. Some students smirked, others whispered to each other, expecting a mediocre performance. But she did not see them. She focused only on the piano, only on the music that had become a part of her being. Sitting down, she positioned her fingers on the keys, felt the cool surface beneath her touch, and let the first notes flow. The beginning was gentle, tentative, as if testing the waters. But as she settled into the piece, her confidence grew. Her fingers moved with precision and grace, expressing the emotions she had poured into every practice session. The melody filled the room, and slowly, the atmosphere began to change. The whispers faded. Faces that had been skeptical now turned toward her, eyes widening in surprise. People leaned forward in their seats, listening intently, caught by the beauty and skill of her playing. As the performance continued, she became fully immersed in the music. She forgot the audience, the doubts, the past mockery. She felt only the sound, the rhythm, the story she was telling through the keys. Every chord, every note was a reflection of her dedication, her passion, and her love for music. The room was silent except for the piano, and in that silence, she felt a connection with everyone present. A shared experience that transcended words. By the time she reached the final notes, the audience was captivated. Some were visibly moved, their eyes glistening, their expressions softened by the emotions the music evoked. Those who had doubted her, those who had laughed, could no longer hide their surprise. The performance had exceeded all expectations, not because it was flawless in a mechanical sense, but because it was alive, heartfelt, and powerful. When she finally lifted her hands from the keys, there was a brief moment of silence. Then, slowly, applause began to fill the room. It started with a few scattered claps, then grew into a thunderous ovation. People stood, cheering, smiling, and some even wiped away tears. The sound of recognition and admiration was overwhelming, a feeling she had never experienced before. In that moment, she realized that all the hard work, all the doubts, all the mockery had led to this triumph. She had proven not only to the audience but to herself that she was capable of greatness. After the performance, many approached her to offer praise. Teachers, classmates, and friends all expressed their admiration. Some admitted they had underestimated her, and others simply wanted to tell her how moved they had been. She smiled, feeling a mix of pride and humility. The journey had been long and challenging, but this moment made every struggle worthwhile. Her confidence began to grow in ways she had never imagined. The performance opened doors she had not even considered. Invitations to play at other events, interest from local music clubs, and encouragement from her mentor gave her a sense of possibility. She realized that talent combined with perseverance could create opportunities that once seemed out of reach. But more importantly, she discovered something deeper: the joy of sharing her passion. She had spent so much time practicing in solitude, developing her skills quietly. She had almost forgotten the power of connection that music could create. The performance reminded her that music was not just about personal growth, it was about touching others, conveying emotions, and creating moments that lingered in the hearts of those who listened. In the days following the showcase, she continued to practice, but with a renewed sense of purpose. She understood that success was not a single moment on stage, but a continuous journey. She explored new pieces, experimented with different styles, and even began composing more complex melodies. Her music became more expressive, more confident, and more alive. The experience of performing and being recognized had given her the courage to push her boundaries further. She also reflected on the doubts and mockery she had faced. She no longer felt anger or hurt when remembering them. Instead, she felt gratitude. Those challenges had forced her to grow, to develop resilience, and to deepen her dedication. Without them, she might never have discovered the full extent of her talent, or the joy of proving to herself what she was capable of. Her journey was far from over. The talent showcase was a milestone, not the final destination, but it marked a turning point. She had taken a risk, faced her fears, and allowed her music to speak for her. In doing so, she had discovered the true power of perseverance, passion, and belief in oneself. And she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she now had the strength and confidence to face them. Guided always by the music that flowed through her heart and fingers, the day of the major performance arrived, a performance that would bring together not just her school, but families, teachers, and community members. She felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness unlike anything she'd experienced before. Months of preparation, practice, and perseverance had led to this moment. Every note she had played in private, every experiment with rhythm or melody, every moment of frustration and triumph had been building to this one day. She knew the stakes felt high, but she also understood that this was not just about impressing others. It It was about expressing herself fully, without fear. Backstage, she could hear the hum of the crowd outside and the occasional applause for other performers. Her heart raced, her stomach tight with anticipation. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, focusing on the music that had become her constant companion. She thought about all the hours she had spent alone with the piano, all the times she had faced mockery and doubt, and all the small victories that had built her confidence. Each thought anchored her, reminding her that she was ready. When her name was announced, she walked onto the stage, trying to keep her steps steady despite the fluttering in her chest. She approached the piano and seated herself carefully. The lights were bright, the audience was large, and the silence that greeted her was heavier than any she had experienced before. She could feel the skepticism in the room. People who had doubted her, laughed at her, or underestimated her. But she let it go. Her focus was the music, the story she wanted to tell with every note. Her fingers touched the keys, and she began to play. The first notes were soft, tentative, like a whisper, but as the piece progressed, her confidence grew. The melody unfolded naturally, each phrase expressing emotion she had carried for so long. She played with precision and passion, allowing herself to be fully immersed in the sound. She forgot the audience, forgot the doubts, and became one with the music. Gradually, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Faces that had been skeptical now leaned forward, eyes widening in surprise. Whispers faded into attentive silence. The music captured attention, creating an invisible connection between her and everyone listening. They could feel the emotion, the dedication, and the depth of her playing. Every chord spoke of her journey, the hours of practice, the private struggles, and the perseverance that had brought her to this moment. The piece reached its crescendo, and she played with intensity and emotion, letting every note resonate with the audience. The sound filled the room, moving through the air like a story unfolding. Some people closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. Others sat in awe, completely captivated. Even those who had once doubted her could not deny the power of her performance. The laughter and whispers that had haunted her for so long were replaced by admiration and awe. As she approached the final notes, she felt a mixture of relief and exhilaration. Her heart pounded with excitement, but she also felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had given everything she had, pouring her soul into the music. The final chord lingered in the air, and for a moment there was complete silence. Then the room erupted into applause. The sound was overwhelming, a thunderous recognition of her talent and effort. People stood, cheered, and clapped with enthusiasm. The admiration was not just for her technical skill, but for the emotion and dedication that had brought the music to life. She rose from the piano, her hands trembling slightly from the intensity of the performance. She looked out at the audience, seeing smiles, teary eyes, and expressions of genuine amazement. She felt a surge of pride and joy, a feeling that all the hard work, all the practice, and all the moments of doubt had led to this incredible moment. She realized that the music had spoken louder than words ever could, communicating not just skill, but heart, determination, and passion. After the performance, people approached her, offering praise and congratulations. Teachers expressed their admiration, classmates admitted they had underestimated her, and members of the community complimented the emotion she had conveyed. She felt a sense of connection she had never experienced before. The performance had not only showcased her skill, but also allowed her to touch the hearts of everyone present. She realized that music had the power to break barriers, to change perceptions, and to inspire awe. The experience transformed her confidence. She began to believe in herself more deeply, not just as a musician, but as someone capable of facing challenges and overcoming doubts. She understood that the laughter and skepticism of others were not indicators of her worth or ability. Instead, they had been opportunities for growth, pushing her to practice harder, refine her technique, and deepen her emotional connection to music. In the days following the performance, invitations to perform at other events began to arrive. Local organizations and community groups wanted her to play at concerts and gatherings. Teachers encouraged her to continue developing her talent, and to explore further opportunities for growth. The recognition she had once feared or thought impossible was now a reality. Yet, she remained humble, understanding that this was just one step in a much longer journey. She also reflected on the personal growth she had experienced. The journey to this performance had taught her discipline, resilience, and the importance of perseverance. It had shown her the value of self-belief, the power of passion, and the rewards of dedication. She understood that success was not simply about applause or recognition, but about the journey itself, the hours of practice, the moments of struggle, and the quiet victories that built her character. Her love for the piano deepened as a result of the performance. She realized that music was more than a skill or a hobby. It was a language, it's a means of expression, and a bridge connecting her to others. Every note she played carried meaning. Every melody told a story, and every performance became a shared experience. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was a companion, a confidant, and a source of endless inspiration. The experience also reshaped her perspective on challenges and criticism. She no longer feared judgment or negative comments. Instead, she saw them as opportunities to grow, to improve, and to prove to herself that she was capable. The laughter and doubt that once haunted her had been transformed into motivation. Fueling her determination and strengthening her resolve, she continued to practice with renewed energy. Exploring new compositions, refining her technique, and experimenting with different styles. She challenged herself to reach higher, to play more complex pieces, and to express a wider range of emotions through her music. Each day was an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to deepen her connection with the piano in quiet moments. She reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. She remembered the early days of doubt, the hours of private practice, and the moments of frustration and perseverance. She understood that every step, no matter how small or difficult, had been essential in shaping her as a musician and as a person. The journey had not been easy, but it had been rewarding. Teaching her lessons that extended far beyond music, she also began to think about the impact her music could have on others. She realized that by sharing her passion, she could inspire, move, and connect with people in ways that words alone could not. Her music had the power to evoke emotions, create memories, and leave lasting impressions. This understanding gave her a deeper sense of purpose and motivated her to continue performing and sharing her talent. The performance had been a turning point, a moment when her talent, preparation, and dedication came together in a powerful way. It had shown her the importance of perseverance, the value of self-belief, and the rewards of passion and hard work. It had also demonstrated the transformative power of music, both for herself and for those who listened. She knew that this was just the beginning, that there were many more challenges and opportunities ahead. But she felt ready to face them with confidence and determination. Her journey continued. Guided by the music she loved and the lessons she had learned, she practiced, performed, and created with purpose, always striving to improve, to express herself, and to connect with others. She understood that talent alone was not enough, but when combined with dedication, resilience, and passion, it could achieve remarkable things. And as she sat at the piano, feeling the familiar keys beneath her fingers, she knew that she had found her true calling, one that would guide her through the rest of her life. After the performance that had left the audience in awe, her life began to change in ways she had never imagined. People who had once doubted her now recognized her talent, and opportunities that had seemed out of reach were now within grasp. Invitations to play at local events, community gatherings, and even small competitions arrived, each one a new stage where she could share her music and continue to grow. But beyond the applause and recognition, something more profound had shifted within her. She realized that her journey was no longer just about proving herself. It was about using her music to inspire, connect, and touch others in the days following the performance. She continued to practice diligently, but with a renewed sense of purpose. Each note she played was not just a test of skill, but a means of expression, a way to communicate feelings that words could not capture. She explored new pieces, experimented with different genres, and began composing original music that reflected her own experiences, emotions, and dreams. Every melody became a story, every chord a reflection of the moments she had lived and the lessons she had learned. Her confidence grew steadily. She no longer hesitated when asked to perform, nor did she feel anxious about being judged. Instead, she approached each opportunity with a calm determination, focusing on the music and the story she wanted to tell. The nervousness she had once felt before performances had transformed into excitement, a sense of anticipation for the connection she could create with her audience. She had learned that the joy of performing came not from applause alone, but from the ability to share something meaningful and real. Her family watched her growth with pride. They had supported her quietly from the beginning, and now they could see the results of her dedication and perseverance. They celebrated her achievements, but more importantly, they noticed the transformation in her character. She had become more self-assured, patient, and resilient. The challenges she had faced, the moments of doubt and mockery, had shaped her into someone who could face difficulties with courage and determination. Her music had been the constant thread guiding her through these experiences, and it had helped her develop not only skill, but also a strong sense of self. Friends and classmates, who had once been skeptical, began to approach her with admiration. Some wanted to learn from her, others simply wanted to listen and be inspired. She welcomed these connections, sharing her knowledge and passion with humility. She understood that her talent was not meant to isolate her, but to bring people together, to create moments of understanding and shared emotion. Music had become a bridge, connecting hearts and minds in ways that words often could not. Her mentor remained an important figure in her life. He encouraged her to continue pursuing new challenges and to never stop learning. Talent is only the beginning, he reminded her. It's dedication, creativity, and heart that make a musician truly remarkable. She took these words to heart, understanding that every opportunity to perform, every new composition, and every practice session was a chance to refine her craft and deepen her connection to the music as she gained recognition. She also became aware of the responsibility that came with it. People looked up to her, and her journey had become an example for others facing doubt and challenges. She realized that sharing her story, the struggles, the perseverance, and the triumphs could inspire others to follow their passions and believe in themselves. She began speaking at small gatherings, sharing her experiences, encouraging young musicians to practice with dedication and confidence. Her story became a source of hope and motivation, showing that talent combined with perseverance could overcome obstacles and achieve remarkable outcomes. Despite the increasing opportunities and recognition, she remained grounded. She never let success make her complacent or arrogant. She continued to practice with the same dedication, exploring new techniques and pushing the boundaries of her abilities. Each day was an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to deepen her understanding of music. She knew that mastery was a lifelong journey, and she embraced it with humility and curiosity.